of wires and screens, people looking plotting schemes, cyber tricks in every screen. Are you ready for the meme? Fishing for answers, don't get hooked. Phishing calls, they got us shook. Smishing text, they got you hooked. Stay aware, stay off the books. Email. Okay, so I had to do that. But welcome to another episode of Fishing for Answers. Today I'm here with Dean Sapp. He is the SVP of InfoSec over at Filevine. Dean, I want to start with a game here. So that song that we actually played there was generated by AI. And to demonstrate the power of AI, I want to play a little fun game called "Is it a stock photo or did AI generate it?" Dean, you ready?
Sure, why not?
All right. Okay, stock photo or AI?
Good question. I would say, based on what I can see, I might have to put my glasses on here. I'm going to go with AI.
Correct. Good job. Okay, what about this one?
That one's be either. I'm going to go with stock photo. There we go.
No. Actually, AI. What about this one?
So normally on an AI image, they usually don't get the eyes right. So, but they look fairly realistic. I'll go with stock photo. Oh, see, there we go. Easy to trick everybody.
All right, and one last one.
One last one. Well, considering percentages, I'm not sure you would use AI on every one of them, but you might. So I'll say AI.
You're right. I did use AI on absolutely every one of them. It was a
There
trick
you
game.
go.
So, no, you have a fishing story, don't you?
I have lots of fishing stories, but the one that I think that we talked about briefly that's really interesting is so I worked as a cybersecurity consultant and built a cybersecurity company several years ago. And one of our clients said, "Look, we have a very mature phishing training program. Our users are very good at detecting fish and reporting them, and we have a very low click rate." And so essentially, they challenged us and paid us a large amount of money to build a real world phishing campaign to determine if their users would really fall victim to an attack. And so my team went to work. We did a little bit of research about the company.
Now, they
We were
bragged
able,
a little bit about how good they were and how you wouldn't be able to get them, right?
that's true. They were very confident that we would not be able to fish them. And of course, one of the first things I asked them was, Did you turn on 2FA for your users?" They're like, "Oh no, we don't need that. Our users are very savvy, and we have strong password policies in place." I said, "Fantastic, way to go. We'll just do some exercises and see how well you do." Right. So we did research. We found a actually an intranet web page for this firm, and we realized it was fairly current. And so we started to build a campaign around benefits. We did some Google searches and found out who their
That's
benefits provider was. Right. And so we started to put together a very believable page. We bought a domain that was a lookalike domain, just typo squatted one character off, an I for an L, something that was not easily noticeable. Bought the domain, built a small web page that represented their site, and said, "Hey, congratulations. We have open enrollment for the firm. We have several new exciting benefits programs," and just made each of the benefits a clickable link to the provider. And then we said all we need to do is to sign up. And of course, this was in December, I believe. So it was great timing for the next year's benefits enrollment. And all we did was say, look, for the first member or first employee in each office of the firm, they were a multinational firm, we will give an iPad to the first person that signs in and enrolls. And all we did when they went to click on enroll here was we popped up a dialog box that was their normal Windows login, Gina, uh, so that they would put in their username and password. And we just flashed a message, fantastic, you're enrolled. Look for additional details in the weeks to come on your benefits you've selected.
And
So
how many people did you get to fall for it?
we had probably 40 to 45% of the firm gave us their username and password.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's a great story. Benefits were one of those things that we found were incredibly effective when I was in pen testing. Not something that I do as much now that I'm on the educational side, because that's how you upset some people.
That's
Speaking
right.
of which, let me ask this question before we even jump there. Did anyone get upset about that fish?
Clearly, they're like, that was unfair. You're toying with real things that people have to do. How dare you, hacker?
And I think that actually leads to a really good subject of the different types of phishing simulations that you might want to run. What you were doing was a risk assessment. It was more like a penetration test or social engineering assessment. It's holds no bars. Like let's see if we can break in here, and we're not going to hold anything back. We're going to really go after you. And then I think there's another type that is education, and that goes a lot different because you probably don't want people to be mad there.
That's right. It's a very careful balance that you have to find, because you want your employees to engage. You want them to report fish when they come in. You want them to not be bashful about saying, "Hey, I clicked on that link." So the shame element has to be pretty low. You really don't want anyone to feel bad for doing the right thing and telling you after they did the wrong thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they need to be praised even when they did the wrong thing because they came to you. Because what's the natural human reaction? Oh crap, I should hide this. And
Right.
and that's the worst thing they can possibly do. So, if they come running straight to the security team and say, "Hey, I made a mistake. I really, and tell us," that allows us to fix it before it snowballs out of control.
That's
So,
right.
I'm a big advocate of praising them. Hey, thank you. You did the right thing. You're truly part of our, one of our best defenders or whatever, even if that day they almost got you hacked.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. So you must have some other stories. Anything else like a new type of attack that you're seeing?
Well, I would say that the quality of many of the phishing messages has been quite good. I think everyone who's been dealing with phishing over the last 20 years understands that a lot of these attacks are born overseas, where Google Translate is the core mechanism of ensuring that the grammar and the English is, you know, consistent with our culture. And
Yeah.
so there have been in the past, you've been able to very easily tell a fish because of the number of grammatical errors and things that are clearly inconsistent, the use of uppercase in strange places and things like that. So I would say that AI has dramatically improved the quality of these phishing messages, and they're far more believable. And in the context of events, right, with like the hurricanes recently in Florida, there's been an uptick in attacks and trying to exploit folks, unfortunately, because of the hurricanes. So contextual awareness is increased with these phishing campaigns that are AI driven, and the quality of attacks and the amount of research that the attackers can gather quickly has increased significantly.
So let's talk about that research element. How are they using that research?
Well, I can only surmise from the investigations that we've done is that the bad guys or bad gals, whoever they may be, uh, they are able to look across. They can use AI to and prompts to look across larger data sets. Right.
Yeah.
We know that the attackers, and I joke about this all the time, that the attackers listened to their moms when they were kids, and they share data breach information. They share large repositories of usernames and passwords. And so AI allows an attacker to take a known quantity. So look, we see this password from a from one of the data breaches, maybe
Hmm.
JCPenney or TJ Maxx or some of the things that have been out there for a while, and then they want to go and ask the AI, do we see other instances of this same username, right? And if it's the exact same username and password and it's used in multiple places, you can very quickly have AI go and do those types of searches and respond back with positive answers, right? And of
Yeah.
course, there's some free tools that have been developed. Have I been pwned, for example? It's a
Yeah.
great way to go and see where your particular email account has had the password exposed over the last 10, 12, 14, 15 years.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about Apple and just built into their privacy is anytime I enter my email address, they give me email relays where if that is breached, it doesn't get tied back to me. And I
Hmm.
think that's a really great thing. And I think it's one of those things we don't think about enough as Americans, and that's privacy. And we honestly, we don't have the level of privacy in this country that so many other countries around the world enjoy, and I think that's largely because we don't demand it.
Right. I would say that's an accurate assessment. We don't demand it. Um, and it's becoming just one of the things we almost take for granted at times. Right. And
Yeah,
protecting our information and ensuring that it's only in the places we want it to be. I think we're starting to see more states that are stepping up and they're creating data protection agreements, and of course in the HIPAA space, there's been BAAs for a long time, business associate agreements of how you will protect that information. But we are asked all the time at Filevine to enter into these agreements where we will ensure that we are taking steps to protect the privacy and confidentiality of client information. And, unfortunately, there are some really good tools. Like if you want to know where your data has been, stored, you can there's a large number of sort of data repositories around the country, around the world. These are data aggregators that collect information about people, and you can ask them to forget your information, to
yeah,
delete it, and to purge it. And usually if they're based out of the United States, they have a legal obligation to do so. And so I had a client that was a VIP Hollywood star, and her information had been placed on the dark web and on some public forums without her consent. And it wasn't the most positive news out there about the individual. And it took us about 6 months and probably 200 legal letters to every single data broker out there to delete the information. And eventually it happened, but it took a lot of time and effort.
yeah. No, it can be very difficult to get your data out. And yes, people have an obligation, a legal responsibility to delete that data. I
That's
do
right.
question sometimes how much it actually happens. To me, one of the funniest things about that whole Ashley Madison breach way back in the day was the fact that they had charged people, I don't know, something like $30 or $75 extra to have their accounts deleted permanently and forgotten. And they took the people's money but never deleted any of it. And so to me, I mean, when I heard that, I laughed about it, but it does make me wonder, are these companies actually deleting our data, and how do you actually know, and what steps can we take? I don't know that there's an answer there, but it'd be cool if you had any advice there.
Yes. Well, there are several services, and I don't want to name any of them to show any kind of bias, but you
Yeah.
could do some searches on reputation management services, and they are essentially designed to do that, to go around to talk to all the data brokers. Sometimes they have legal counsel that on your behalf will file these, cease and desist letters and require them to take down your likeness, or things that are attributed back to an individual where there was no consent required or requested. So there are legal mechanisms. Again, Filevine, we work with law firms all the time. We have about 4,500 law firms that use our software, and so they have these processes to go about, when requesting compliance and to provide evidence of compliance. But then you often will need a cybersecurity expert to go in and do searches and queries, and AI can actually help with this. Try and find likenesses of a photo, or to find the actual representation of a person, or things like that. So it does work. It does take considerable amount of time and expertise to be able to actually sanitize some data off the internet. And again, if the firm, or the if a web property website has strict policies that say that they own the data, in some cases there isn't much you can do, except sue them if they weren't making it very clear and conspicuous that they own the data. Because that's a very big point, because most people don't know that if a service is free, they are the service,
Yeah,
right?
they're the product. Yeah, exactly.
You are the product. So I had a friend, Boyd McKinnon, that used to say that all the
It's never
time, and it's
free.
so true. It's so true.
Well, yeah, there's no such thing as free. You're
Right.
paying in one way or another, but there's certainly no such thing as free. I think that's a really great reminder. Okay, so you've been in cybersecurity for a while. Why don't you tell us your background? How do you get into cybersecurity in the first place?
Sure. Well, I was always an adventurous young lad, and I liked to see how things worked, and I liked to see how I
Same.
could make things work the way I wanted them to work. I may or may not have skirted a few laws as a kid, and decided at some point I needed to get permission so I didn't get in trouble when I did these things. Kind of exploring my curiosity. So I've just always been interested in tinkering, taking things apart, putting them back together, figuring how they work, and I decided, hey, I could make a career out of trying to stop bad guys or bad gals from stealing information. And so I've had some really wonderful mentors that kind of helped me get the training I needed, and to understand both the business side of a cybersecurity role. Because if you don't ever want to be considered as Doctor No, you know,
Yeah.
no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. Really, you have to be a business enabler. So I've had several really wonderful business career opportunities. Again, I helped build a cybersecurity company called Braintrace that was acquired by Sophos, one of the largest cybersecurity companies out there. And I've also been building cybersecurity programs in the legal industry. So I worked for a very large law firm for about 8 years, and then I worked for a very large not-for-profit for about 7.5 years, and then a couple of fintechs, really large financial institutions, and then most recently at a large doc management, case management platform. So my cultural background has been, there are a lot of bad actors out there trying
Yeah.
to steal, hard-earned money and information, and law firms are data aggregators, right? They have some of the most valuable information on the planet. They have
I
patents
used to
and
pen test
copyright.
law firms.
Yeah,
Holy crap, the stuff we found. Like, I mean, stuff I certainly can't mention on here. And you're just like, why is that not more protected?
that's
That,
exactly right.
like, I mean, no joke, one pen test, every single person on my team, like, we start sharing around, like, look what we found. And we're all so flabbergasted at the high level of sensitivity of this data. Like, in the banking world, the equivalent of, TSSCI type data, right? And we're just like flabbergasted. We literally went to lunch because we're just like, we could not believe what we just found.
Yeah,
Um, but we did this. We did this a lot, and it was our job to demonstrate these things. And so we would, always be going for the crown jewels. And it was very common. I'm not picking on this one law firm because this was the case in most that we went to. So law firms definitely need somebody like yourself to help out there, because they're the experts on law, but maybe not as much on the IT side. Now, I found
for
law
sure.
firms were easy to social engineer because they abuse their help desk people. So
They do, and they're also they're culturally susceptible to opening documents
yeah,
because their clients send them documents every day that they're using to generate work product. So
yeah,
it's sort of ingrained in the culture. So you have to really, for law firms, there's a lot of you just go back to a lot of the basics, 2FA on everything that's important, and ensuring that you're doing domain lookups on emails because DMARC, S
oh, those
DKIM
things
and
help.
SPF are all really they do work because if you can ensure that no mail is delivered to the firm that doesn't have a real domain that's authenticated and verified, then you're likely going to reduce the number of phish emails that get picked up. Like in our scenario, we created a lookalike domain. If you had DMARC and DKIM in place, that domain would have been blocked. They wouldn't
Yeah,
have been able to get the email. They wouldn't have been able to click on the link to see that new benefits page. So there are
yeah.
technical controls that are so important to protect every business.
I agree. And to add to that point, every day there's almost 4 billion phishing emails that are sent globally. If you simply do DMARC and SPF, and you make sure that you're set up properly, you've more than cut that number in half.
Right.
If not by three quarters. And so that is why those things are so critical. And it's not that any layer in cybersecurity is 100% effective. It's that when we have enough layers, we're, more effective, and we get a lot closer to that 100% marker. Um, so this podcast is all about the human element of cybersecurity. Leaving this question wide open, what are the top three things that you've learned over the years as it pertains to human security? And you can go any direction you want with that.
Sure. Well, the first thing I've learned is that we are the problem, right? Humans are very susceptible to
I was going to say
patterns.
humans or the cybersecurity team.
All of our users because we have tendencies, right? We have tendencies to reuse passwords. We have tendencies to have patterns in our passwords. We have tendencies to, not look at our Chrome browser. It says we have 135 places where that password's been seen, right? So our human tendencies are one of the biggest issues, and the fact that we're impatient. We do not want to be inconvenienced with a second factor. Heaven forbid we have to go get our phone out and click on that little one-time token that's been sent to our phone or Google Authenticator, or, Microsoft Authenticator. So the fact that we are impatient and we are,
I know I
also,
am. I hate waiting for that. I do. I do. I use
yeah,
multi-factor, but I was just complaining about it right before we got on this call.
that's right. Plus, we have this instant gratification need where we want it now. So if those benefits are available, I want that iPad. I'm going to get that iPad.
Yep.
Never mind if I have to give up my password to some hacker. I want it, and I want it now. So we're also somewhat easy to be beguiled or tricked, and that's all part of we are. I know people who are really beautiful, nurturing people, and they just want to help,
Yeah.
and they will help the bad guys, with pretexting, or they get a
It
phone
will.
call. Hey, I'm new to the company. I just really don't know how to get to the help desk. Can you help me? And
Mhm.
there have been 3 or 4 pen tests where my end goal was to get the help desk to give me their username and password. And on all 3 of those cases, you build a compelling argument, and people are more than willing to help and give you their username and password.
Yeah,
So
no,
it
I
just,
once got a domain admin to give me their domain admin credentials over the phone. And it
yeah,
was for a major law firm, coincidentally. It was one of those pen tests where you start the pen test and you're game over in 10 minutes. Um,
that's right.
and
That's
not
right.
all of them happen that way, but I think for as many that you really just beat your head against the wall trying to figure out how to get full control, you have those ones where it's just oh that was easy. Okay, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's those tendencies where we just have to understand that if it's pressure and time sensitive, and
yeah,
from some supervisor or someone that you may or may not have a relationship with, it's probably fake. it's
yeah,
it's probably a fish trying to convince you to go do something, to buy some gift cards, or to send a wire. And oh, by the way, the bank at the last minute changed their wiring number. I
yeah.
mean, that like
Our
never
company just
happened.
randomly decided to change accounts overnight. I'm going to need you to send that over here instead.
That's right.
No red flags over here though.
No
Uh,
red
but
flags.
but I do think that it comes natural. Back to that very trusting person that you were talking about. I did a lot of physical penetration testing when I was ran red teams and on red teams. And initially, it was funny because I was only going to be the application guy. Like I wanted to be the most technical hacker in the world. And then, no joke, my first physical assessment, I talked my way into a bank vault. I'm like, wow, that was a great adrenaline rush. I think I'm going to do this instead. And
Mm.
I actually did a lot in applications security and hacking, but because of my experience on that physical pen side of things, I would target that specific person. And the reason is because you trust that person, and maybe not you personally, but the average person trusts them, even the security team. And what I was able to do with that was go to them all needing help. Hey, I'm lost. Could you please help me find the data center? I was sent for this reason, blah, blah, blah. Talk over her head a little bit while being nice and respectful. And she's going to say, sure, let me help you, and walk over and then relay my pretext to you. And when that happens, I had 100% success rate
Happy
because
dance.
everyone trusted me. But if I had to tell you my story, I did not have 100% success rate.
Yeah, no, it's so true. If you've read the Verizon 2024 data breach investigation report,
I did. I cried.
68%, yeah, 68% of the breaches in 2023 included that human element.
I would
And
argue all
yeah,
of them did. I still have an issue
touche.
with that number because so what about the technical ones? Didn't a developer still write vulnerable code? Didn't a developer still use a vulnerable library? So isn't that still human error?
Yeah, it is, and I don't disagree with you. At some point, they all involve it, but I think they were just trying to emphasize it where either a human made an error, a human clicked on a link, a human was tricked and with pretexting into giving something out, because there
Yeah.
is that human element. I was working at a very large law firm many years ago, and we I was sitting with the or standing with the office administrator down by the security desk, and the security officer's like, you guys really need to train your people to bring their badges into the office. I've
Yeah.
had this summer associate come the last 3 nights at the last minute, and they needed me to let them into the office. You've got to do a great job training. And I looked at this office administrator. I'm like, we don't have any female summer associates. And they're like, what exactly did you do? And
Wait,
when did you let them
I
into
have
the
the thing for
office?
that.
So that that third party element, there's 15% of these breaches according to Verizon, or for the Verizon report, 15% in 2023 included a third party, someone that you trusted,
Yeah.
someone, whether it be a cloud provider or a security guard,
Yeah.
right? You So there are these exposure points everywhere, and like you said, it comes back to how persuasive you are, speaking with some form of authority or some language, some terminology that people don't understand. And their default reaction is, okay, I don't want to look like I'm dumb. So here you
I'm
go.
gonna
Have
help
my
you.
password.
No, and there is a thing there where talking over somebody's head in the right way, and just there's maybe a fine line, but it does work to get people to let you do almost anything. My go-to was latency. It's actually a little bit funny, but I could talk about milliseconds and latency, and almost anybody would let me go anywhere. And so if I did, if they caught me by surprise, or I wasn't creative that day, I'm just like, oh, latency problems, and it would
That's
work.
right.
That story I told you where I got domain admin with that law firm. I got domain admin on the very first day of the assessment. And so at this point now, we still have a physical assessment to do. And because it's this large, multinational law firm, we're testing a bunch of their different locations for cyber, or for their physical security. And so it was a team of 4 different ethical hackers, and each one of us was going to a different facility. Well, I was the last one to go in, and by the time my flight landed that day, all of my colleagues had already failed. And we're like, okay, so they're really good with with their physical security. I want to make sure we get in. We're domain admin. There's no excuse. And so while I'm, waiting on an Uber to get there, and on my way to the hotel to check in before I go to the client location to see if I can get in, I ask my teammates, I say, listen, find the gatekeeper, put something on their calendar for me to be coming there, send an email from an executive so she doesn't question it. Just make sure that when I get there, she's expecting a person by this name. And so I walk in, give them my fake name. She says, I've been expecting you. She walks me all the way back to their data center. I'm in there. And about 5 minutes later, this guy comes in from the IT team. He says, who are you and why are you in my data center? And I say, latency, brother. But the latency jokes aside, he leaves. 5 minutes later, these really big guys come, and they say, sir, we're going to need you to come with us. And I realize I'm being bounced. And as I go out into the hallway, the hallways are just lined on both sides, right? And so I realize that they're all looking for entertainment. They want to watch a show. And so I give them the show that they're looking for, because I didn't want to give my letter of authorization, because that, to me, that's failing. Close is not failing, but getting detained is. And so anyway, I just put on a massive scene, and am able to walk right out the elevator. The first thing after I'm gone, they look at each other and they say, well, shit, we should have detained him. And sure enough, it goes into the report. But that is how I discovered what I call the denial of thinking attack. And too often you can actually make people not think. And even though they know really well what to do, But if you give them enough entertainment, they'll forget it every time.
Yeah, for sure. I was doing an on-site similar to that at a extremely large investment bank, and they happened to give tours of their facility on certain days.
Wait a
And
second.
so I just decided, well, heck, let's see how far we can go. And the tour actually walked by the data center, right? So they were showing some parts of the building that were pretty impressive, and we walked right by it, and I let myself out of the group. They went around the corner. I stayed behind. The door had been left open. So I
It just
walk
keeps
into the
getting
data
worse.
center. I walk into the data center. None of the racks are secured. So I open up the rack and I simulated if I was going to insert a USB drive to allow me to get root of that device because it was running as admin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I closed the door. I closed the door to the data center, walked back out, rejoined my group. They had no idea I was gone, and they had no idea that I could have injected malware into their devices and and had complete run of the data center. So, those types of things still happen, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you look at what are the physical controls, because they really do still matter. And even in the legal industry, those multifunction printers and scanner devices still have memory chips and hard drives
They
in
do.
them. And Russia and China still buys the most of these from US companies worldwide. And they're stealing data right in front of us. So a
They're
lot of these
also
basic things, yeah.
they're also really good for phishing, even inside your own network, because these things are the one exception to all of your email security rules, and often they're outdated, they're unpatched, and so it's not difficult for the attackers to get in there and use those email features as well. We actually used to use them for phishing all the time. We'd take and create some sort of malicious document, or a document that's just designed to get them to go to a website. It depended on the pretext. But we would do that and it would be super effective. Sort of like these days, we see a lot of people using DocuSign and different things like that. Very
Yeah,
legit
sure.
service, very legit email you get, but don't click because that document in there, it's probably not going to have malware in it because DocuSign does a lot to prevent that. But there's going to be something in there to get you, and whether it's trick you to go to a website or whatever, but there's going to be something. And I see a lot of people getting hit with stuff like that lately. You're in legal.
Very,
I
very
imagine
true.
that's one of the
Yeah.
top attacks there.
It is. They're the data aggregators, again, patents, trademarks, M&A, mergers, play the markets. They're very, very relevant when it comes and target rich. I actually did a pen test for a very large firm in on the West Coast, and they let me log into in their guest area outside the lobby. They had a
Yeah,
network connection, so I was able to, they're like, stay as long as you want. We're not going to let you in, but do whatever you want, right? Test the
yeah,
wireless, test it. And the network jack was connected to a VLAN that had corporate printers on it. All of those printers are running web
yeah,
servers, right? And those web servers are rarely well protected and hardened. And what do you know? You do a little searching online, there's a default username and password, right? Or there's an exploit. And then that
yeah.
web server, right? That printer is connected to some time entry system. And that time
Mhm.
entry system goes to an accounting system or a database server that has access of all of the matters and the client names and their bill codes, and if they have ACH or any kind of
Yeah,
automatic payment. So you literally go from the lobby to the bank and
yeah.
getting access to all of their banking information, all through an unsecured printer running web services.
So I love that story. It reminds me, and this is why one of my favorite type of person or people to interview on this show are former pen testers or even current pen testers, because they just have so many stories. But that reminds me of a time where I was pen testing this Vegas casino, and I go in, I check into my room because if I'm testing a casino, I'm going to stay there and I'm going to see what I can do from the room too. And so I noticed that there's a network cable plugged into the back of the television. So I unplug it and I start looking around on the network. Their domain controllers on there. It's their production main network. There's zero segmentation whatsoever. And so in every pen test, you say, well, if we discover any critical findings, we'll alert you immediately. So I'm like, oh crap. Okay. So I call and I let them know, hey, we discovered that your rooms are connected to your main production network, and our pen testers actively on that network. So they shut down the access to every single guest room just to shut down my access. It was great. It was great. It made us getting domain admin much more rewarding.
Well, that's
But
that's sort of the holy grail for most pen testers, because a lot of law firms are running AD online or on site, and then some of them are going through the process of implementing O365 and Azure AD, which is a much more securable way of doing things. But when you have every computer joined to the domain, then you have in the SAM database, you have those credentials for the domain admin. So now it's a matter of time of just, connecting to the device, popping the database, running rainbow tables against the AD password. And you know what? If it's under 12 to 14 characters, there's a very good chance you're going to get that in a couple minutes.
often
So
it's easier than that because you can do things like Kerber roasting a
yeah, that's
task
right. Just
and
exactly replay it.
yeah, or the S&B relay. So yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It's it is often far too easy. That was one of the reasons that I was always so anti Exchange servers. Because the on-prem Exchange servers were a single point of failure. You literally had every single one of your employees logged into the same computer, the same machine, the same server at the same time. Well, what is the danger of that? I don't know. Let's say that maybe Microsoft has been known to accidentally store credentials and memory and plain text. And so that's what we would do. We would get in there, we would run Mimikatz, and we would have every single person's password, and to a level that sometimes they didn't even know.
Right.
I remember I was working with this famous charity, and I was talking to their IT guy, and he's trying to log into an account that I've already memorized because I've been using it to move around the network all
The
day.
network. Yeah.
And he keeps getting the password wrong, and I tell him what it is, and he's like, thank you, I had forgotten completely what that account password was. But that's how it works. I mean, and I think a lot of people don't realize that the bad guys can potentially have more access than you.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you. So I've done instant response for probably 50, 60 breaches. And in almost every case, if there's an Exchange server and OA online, and then they have a combination of Macs and Windows, there's all this reverse compatibility, which basically deprecates the security so that that old iPad or that old Mac Mini or whatever can still get email on behalf of the client. It really is problematic. It's very difficult to secure it. I've worked on nation state cases where clients were compromised by APTs, and it almost always came through an Exchange backdoor or some 0-day that had been known but not fixed. It's just
Yeah.
it's a very popular product. It's a very good product when it is maintained and secured properly, and turning off SMB sharing and so many of the basic things. Just if they're not well done, and then you're in a large corporate network, now it's just we just find the weakest point in and we leverage that to pivot, get domain admin, and now we have access to the entire network.
And hackers are always going to go after the path of least resistance, the
That's right.
low hanging fruit. Okay, so AI changes everything. it's really the next major evolution of technology. First we had the internet, then we had the personal computer, then we had the smartphone, and now it's AI. Well, AI has been around for a long time. I think there's no denying that what we have today is special,
Mhm.
and it's growing at an exponential rate, and it changes the threat landscape. And that's the part I want to dig into. What are you most concerned about when it comes to AI? And what do you think we need to be training our people about from an awareness perspective?
Right, great question. I would say that what the majority of users, and again, AI is starting to become very popular in the legal space because if you think about it, written text is a very, very good use case of AI,
Oh,
comparing
absolutely.
documents,
Yeah.
right, comparing things, taking 30 years of history of briefs or demand letters or immigration packets and just taking that packet in another language, putting it into English, having it reviewed by a human, it really does save tremendous time. So I'd say that the legal industry just has being aware of that anything you put into a public model now is public data. So you don't want to put your client's information in there, knowing that it may help you, but if you don't have a private model or a contract with the AI company so that as soon as they run the prompt and the embedding and then they come back with an outcome or a new document, then you purge memory. So this is what we do at Filevine is we'll purge the memory and then the document goes back into their instance and it has the same roles and access controls as the person. Because what you don't want is somebody at the firm saying, tell me all of the salaries of the shareholders. And the
Yeah.
AI has access to all of the data that is in the firm, all of the documents, and it comes back with, oh, well, here's the top 50 people and they're paid more than you are. So go complain, right?
I
You know,
That was my absolute favorite, theme for the USB thumb drive drops that we would do in pen testing. We actually went to this, promotional company that would print USB drives with companies' logos on them or whatever, but instead of putting a logo on it, we just put the words, "confidential" on it in bright, big red letters, and then we would put documents on there that just were macro embedded malware with whatever fake documents, so that hopefully they didn't tell the security team about it, right? But we would just put these documents on there, and the best one that we ever had, well, we had two really effective ones. One was like right now we do 2025 or 2024 executive bonus plan. That was always a
yeah.
good one. But you know what? The one that was almost even better was 2024 layoff schedule.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, the USB drives and drops are very effective. Depending on your audience, I found that wedding photos tend to get picked up by very caring and loving women that know that someone's dropped their most important photos that they have and wants to return them to their owner, right?
Hmm.
Or, like you say, if anything related to case files, anything salacious, anything, Johnny Depp trial notes, you
P
name it. If
Diddy,
it's yeah, P Diddy, if it's in the news,
P
if
Diddy
it's
client
current,
list. You found
yeah,
it.
you're going to get someone to open that up, to look at it, click on it, send it to 12 of their friends.
Send it to 12 of their. Well, we once had a fish go viral, and it was a worst of both worlds benefits package. So, um, yeah, it can happen. And they will actually send it to their friends. But it makes me wonder, have the bad guys, well, they must have. Uh, but that means the bad guys must have had a fish go viral. I mean, can you imagine you're the, the well, say the fictitious Nigerian prince, and you're over there, and you send your email, and all of a sudden you send it to 100 people, but 10,000 people or 100,000 people have it. I don't know. That's absolutely insane to me. Um,
Well, go ahead.
go
Yeah.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you think about the standard MO for a compromised fish inbox, the bad guy, as soon as they either guess the password or pull it from a data dump or get you to click on a link and they steal your browser cookie and they use the cookie to log in. However they get in, some of the most common things is they will create folders down at the bottom of the folder structure that you don't see, right? And it'll be something innocuous like drafts or memo or something that you don't already have but doesn't look very suspicious. And then they set up these auto forwarding rules. So if a
Mhm.
message, like they often get in the middle of moving money, changing ACH and wire instructions and things like that, and they often will get in the middle and then they'll send these messages to the bank or to, in the case of I was working on a real estate transaction fraud case, and this couple was buying their dream home. Well, the hacker got into the realtor's inbox and then set up these auto forwarding rules. So whenever the hacker would interact with the real customer in the real email, she would never see it because it would automatically go to this folder. And then the folder had a self deletion time process. So every 15 minutes, it would nuke anything that was in there. So there was
Yeah.
really nothing for her to see. It never hit her device. The hackers said, "Hey, great news! We're going to close on the house a week early." And again, the wiring instructions have changed. So here you go. Here's the
Oh,
phone number to call the bank. And of course, the phone number was the hacker. So if they did happen to call, they're like, "Oh yes, those are confirmed." And they, "Can you give us the confirmation number off the email?" And of course, they had created the confirmation number. So the couple wires the $1,000,000. The realtor doesn't
man.
know anything about it. And come a week later, now it's really time to close, and the $1,000,000 is gone. The hacker got it. They got their dream house, and the realtor is stuck because now they're culpable. They didn't turn on two-factor authentication. They did not communicate effectively with the client, and now the client's lost $1,000,000, and they
Yeah,
can't buy
if I were the
their house.
client, I would absolutely hold the realtor accountable. Not that, it's necessarily well, it is. I mean, we all have that duty of care to our clients. It's our mistakes, or rather, when our mistakes can get them hacked, we have a duty to make sure that we don't. And that is really the heart of cybersecurity being everybody's responsibility, not
Right.
just one person's responsibility. So, with that, let me ask you the question: people, greatest asset or biggest weakness? You have to pick one.
Yes. I'm a hacker, we don't
Yes.
operate with the rules as expected. Yes, people are the greatest asset for every business. Is their thought leadership, their ability to create work product, to create new ideas, games, movies, you name it. It's the creative mind,
Yeah.
but it's also the absent mindedness and perhaps some ease and comfort that make us also vulnerable to a sophisticated attack or even a simple one. I mean, I tell all of the customers and people I meet, put 2FA on everything that's important to you.
Mhm.
Otherwise, just consider it as if you're sharing it with the world. If you don't put two factor on your bank accounts, your emails, your case management system, everything that's critical to your business, if you don't put it on there, then you are accepting the fact that that data is available to the world. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of time.
I mean, there's a few of those core cybersecurity controls that you need.
Right.
Multi-factor, one of them. Security awareness training, firewall, and an EDR. Now,
Yep.
hopefully you have more than that. But if you don't, there are a few. Are there any others that you'd add to that?
Yeah, I would just say patching, of probably the 20 to 30% of attacks that are external. Most of these attacks are just using credentials that you already have.
Mhm.
Some of them are legit hacking, but a lot of them are just exploiting a vulnerability that's been out there for over a year. Because there's a return level. The longer the vulnerability's been out and unpatched, the higher the likelihood it's going to be exploited, right?
Yeah.
And that year mark is kind of the mark of demarcation. If you have stuff that's public facing and hasn't been patched for a year, you are going to get compromised,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Just
yeah. I mean, even
expect it,
internally, I mean, that's one of
right?
the biggest things that leads to hackers getting a major foothold. I mean, when we got into the networks, we always had to compromise credentials somehow. Now, maybe we had one credential, but it wasn't very good. And that
Right.
was a very, very common story. Or we'd get in
Mhm.
and we'd have zero credentials. So, how do we get our first credentials? Well, we target those things that you didn't patch inside of your system, the systems, those things that you didn't harden. And so, the two free things that we can do are harden and patch, and I think that we don't always give those enough attention, because you're absolutely right. Your people aren't even going to get hit if you don't bother patching, because they're just going to come in through your perimeter.
That's right. And if you have to focus on one thing, patching your browsers, because that's the user's interaction with the internet, right?
Yep.
And if your browser isn't hardened and secured, then that experience and the internet is both a brilliant and amazing and dark and disastrous place, right? It's a two-edged
Yeah.
sword when you use it.
Well, and it can get really dark. I mean, these romance scams are getting really, really bad. They're almost never talked about in the enterprise or professional space, but they impact our people, because these people falling for them are mostly people that have jobs, mostly people that are successful. So it's not like they're idiots. They actually tend to be very smart people that just want love, and they're preyed on because of that. So
Yeah, the remote romance scams are very real because they deal with emotion, right?
they
We are
do.
emotional creatures with a longing to attach, to feel loved, to love, and those are very real. And the bad guys play on it. And then elder scams as well. I find a lot of victims that I've talked
They're
to and
both just
helped.
pure evil.
Right, they are. They're taking advantage of someone. "Oh, your daughter is in jail, right? And you need to pay me $5,000 to get her out to post bond. I'll send an Uber to your house. Go write a check or go to the bank and get a deposit of 5,000, and then I'll tell you what are the next steps." And of course, if they send the money, which a lot of them do because they care about their daughter-in-law or sibling or cousin or whoever it is, and of course they don't have the best hearing, they may not have the best visual acuity, and so but they want to help, and so they'll
Yeah.
get the money, they'll send it in the Uber will go to drop it off in Orlando, and then the next thing you know they call them right back. Thank you for doing that. Now I have to get everything, my car out of bond, or out of wherever they're locked, it's locked up somewhere. Can you send me another $4,500 so that I can be set? Thank you so much, Grandma. Thank you so much, Grandpa. And then they'll do it again. And
Yep.
oftentimes, on the second time, they kind of wise up. They're like, wait a minute, and they don't take the time to just pick up the phone. Hey, Timmy, are you all right? Somebody just said you're in jail in Brazil or something, and just picking up a phone or just asking another knowledgeable person to just fact check it. Is it very likely that they're going to be calling you to get them out of jail instead of their mom or their brother? Just
Yeah.
you have to think through it, but because of the emotion, the time sensitivity, that urgency, a lot of these elderly folks fall victim.
This is why we need better education, particularly with elders, but across the board. I mean, I think we need to start very young, second grade. We should be teaching people about online scams, because they are a very real part of everyone's world. And they're not as complicated as Hollywood often makes them out to be. But we are more than out of time today. Thank you so much for joining us for another great edition